In 2005, the vibe for Revenge of the Sith was more welcome than the previous prequel. How Darth Vader became Darth Vader was the story everyone was waiting to see, so there was less scorn towards this release than there was in the second film, due to the backlash of Phantom Menace. There were still many frustrated fans out there, and they spoke up often, but everyone just kind of waited to see what would this film be like before speaking out against it. Things looked promising because after Attack of the Clones, the fandom calmed down quite a bit. Most haters just wrote off the prequels and didn't care about the third installment, and this was seriously reflected in the collector community. During Episode 2, the figures were just statues that couldn't be used in vehicles or even placed in neutral poses or had playability for kids. Those who invested in the Phantom Menace quickly recoiled from collecting after a few months of the saga line being released. You could really tell something was wrong at the time because stores had sparser offerings of figures due to constant peg-warming issues. To correct this, Hasbro quickly backpedaled and made more neutral detailed figures of the original trilogy, and then went so far as to introduce an entire line focused on the classic trilogy called the OTC, or Original Trilogy Collection, to get back those fans that resisted the saga line and, in many respects, the prequels. The OTC line was mainly repaints with a few good figures thrown in for good measure. This line was really lackluster, though, due to its constant rehashes and repaints, but was made to basically grab fans by their nostalgia feel by the packaging. Yet on April 4th, 2005, Hasbro stunned the collector community and fans by releasing an astounding amount of figures that had gorgeous sculpts and detail for Revenge of the Sith, which still stands up to today's quality standards. On day one, Hasbro released a whopping 40 figures, and that did not include exclusives, deluxe, or pack-in figures, plus a very tidy sum of vehicles and beasts as well. It raised the standard of collector expectations for the future, and it emptied a lot of wallets. This only helped the film's hype. Then there was the box office. Unlike Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith was released without any major competition for that genre. There were a few films that were doing well at the box office, like The Longest Yard, Madagascar, and Monster-in-Law, but there was no real competition for this type of film. The only real competitor to this movie was the upcoming Mr. and Mrs. Smith, 3 weeks after Episode 3's initial release. Batman Begins was the real contender, though, but it came out 4 weeks away from Episode 3. Thus, Revenge of the Sith was secure in its domination of the box office, and science fiction fans had nothing else to focus on but this prequel. So when I went to the midnight screening on May 19th, 2005, I was hyped. Although I was disappointed with Attack of the Clones, I knew that Episode 3 was the story Lucas had planned on telling since the 70s, because shortly after Return of the Jedi, most fans learned that Anakin and Obi-Wan dueled on a lava planet in the early 80s, and that was where Darth Vader was horribly burned and ended up in his suit. We know this because George Lucas revealed this after the release of Return of the Jedi. For decades, he had been sitting on these visuals he planned for this movie, and this caused some enthusiasm. My midnight screening was really disappointing, though. There were only 8 or 9 people there besides my party, and it really made me miss my previous experiences in the Phantom Menace in Toledo and Attack of the Clones in Nashville. I was now living unhappily in Montoursville, Pennsylvania, after a short stint in Elmira, New York, due to my job. Despite this, once I was in the theater, I was elated just to be in a galaxy far, far away. The question was, how would the fans who hated the last 2 prequels react to this film, and would it vindicate the franchise for them? Well, If you've paid attention to the last 15 years or so, you know the answer is no in most cases. Prequel hate grew after the film, and it was very popular to trash the prequels as a whole in the upcoming few years. For my Attack of the Clones review, I didn't really notate many critics for the film because I mostly had the same issues that the naysayers did. It was disappointing, and after Revenge of the Sith, I disliked the second installment even more. Unlike that film, though, I have no problem arguing the critics on this one. Although commonly known as the best prequel, a few really try to make it out to be the worst film of all of them, and I'm looking once again at you, Plinkett. It's time for you to do your worst, so go for it.
So let's hear it. Come on. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Wait, what? Heroes on both sides? What? Can evil robots be called heroes? Wait, why am I watching this crap?
Oh boy, this is going to be a long one. The reason why critics note this part in the crawl is because they chose not to pay attention to the previous two movies. The prequel films bluntly establish that the Republic is corrupt and the Jedi are callous. Many systems are ignored because of this, like Tatooine, which the first movie shows, and had slavery, and is ruled by crime lords. And systems such as this turn to rich systems like the Trade Federation, Corporate Alliance, and Techno-Union Army, who hate the Republic because of Episode 1's events. This group, called the Separatists, create their own government, and when they do, war erupts, while the Jedi lead a slave army of clones against these systems. The films clearly show this without external material. So to many in the galaxy, Dooku would seem a hero for standing up to the Republic. Grievous could clearly be made out to be a hero general holding back the Republic. Now, any movie critic who knows their real-life history would never argue this point of the crawl, because history shows that even the most terrible leaders were seen as heroes by many. Let's just look at 1 decade of our recent history of existence. During World War II, we allied with Stalin, who is a monster, and yet Russians preached his name heroically due to ignorance or false patriotism. Then there was Germany. They saw the leading party as heroes, saving the nation from starvation and the unfair subjugation of the Treaty of Versailles. Time magazine in our own America named this leader Man of the Year. How is that for irony? The Japanese during World War II preached honor as if they were heroic and did unspeakable atrocities to children and women in China. So the reading of this crawl makes absolute sense. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Only the uneducated would argue this point.
Okay, so I'll be brief. I have no idea who's attacking what or what ships belong to who, and I'm not even going to try to figure it out.
This, in a nutshell, sums up Plinkett's real problem with his Revenge of the Sith review. He doesn't care, and he doesn't want to. I find it very hard to understand why anyone would value anything Plinkett would say in this critique after the moment he said this, because he has no intention to be fair to the movie, and has proven he hasn't even paid attention to the previous prequel films either. This is compounded when he rambles on about this.
You see, the whole point of all this shit, or so I thought, was that Anakin Skywalker was supposedly a great and kind, noble Jedi Knight who was tragically seduced by the dark side of the Force and became a Darth Vader. Instead, for whatever reason, Anakin is written as a bad apple from the start.
Tell us now!
But whoever's writing this shit suddenly realizes that they need to remind the audience that Anakin is still a good guy. So the dumbest thing ever happened.
They're all over me!
I'm gonna go help them out.
What? He wants to go back and help out the clone trooper. Oh, right. Anakin is noble.
Is being an idiot like being high all the time?
No, it's like constantly being right, you know?
Anakin caring about the clones and trying to rescue people is the very heart of his character, as it was from Episode 1 till now. He was selfless in Episode 1, endangering himself to assist others. In Episode 2, he was desperate to save his mother, and when he failed, he regretted it. He was passionate and aggressive to protect Padme, even though Plinkett makes the same scene appear as if Anakin is a bad apple from the start. Anakin disobeys Jedi orders to help Obi-Wan on Geonosis. He is offended when the Jedi try to make Anakin a turncoat on a mentor and friend who has looked out for him since he was a boy. He is also haunted by the danger he senses for Padme. The point is, Anakin values those around him very much. In fact, it is these attachments, according to George Lucas, that cause him to turn to the dark side.
He started out a great kid. He was very compassionate, and he went to the dark side by... the Jedis are not supposed to have attachments. They can love people, they can do it, but they can't attach. That's the problem when you get in the world of fear. Once you're attached to something, then you become afraid of losing it.
Plinkett tries to state his assumption that the writers wanted to make Anakin look like a caring good guy as a fact, as if it was out of place for him to be so in an attempt to sway your perception to his altered point of view. To say Anakin did not care for others just lacks awareness of the elements of the last two films. This type of argumentation is really considered the pinnacle of prequel criticism? Really?
I don't know, but maybe somehow we lowered the bar a long time ago. And now we're all sitting here in the stink of it all. There's no going back, Stan.
So after the crawl, we get right into the Battle of Coruscant, and it's just a lot of traditional Star Wars fun. The ILM team said they threw everything but the kitchen sink into this setup, and as a result, they actually put in a kitchen sink into the movie. When the CIS ship is destroyed, a kitchen sink is part of its debris to cement the joke.
So the very first thing that we gotta sit through is a pointless and unexciting sequence where Anakin and Obi-Wan fight off robot things on their ships, only to eventually make it to where they were going to get to anyways.
Again, Plinkett is saying this sucks, and you must accept this, even though his subjective point is trying to disguise itself as objective. He claims the entire space battle in the beginning of the film is pointless and boring, as is the preceding scene where they land on Grievous's ship. I'm sure many would disagree, including myself, even the prequel haters.
Yeah, I think this is a really cool opening, only ruined by the fact that we need to watch Anakin fight these dumb gimmicky robots.
Anyways, we get on board Grievous's ship, and we know it's a trap.
It's a trap!
One of the things about Revenge of the Sith is its plethora of deleted scenes and footage. Originally, this film was over 3 hours and had to be shaved down extensively. Now, I have to be completely honest in that I was torn about the making of this video, because right at this point of the video, I was going to cover the original concept of Obi-Wan and Anakin having separate adventures on Grievous's ship, with the original death of Shaak Ti to Anakin's solo duel with Dooku. There is so much deleted footage from this movie, whether animatics, filmed, storyboard, or script, that it could make a video of 4 hours, and that's projecting low. I wanted to cover things like the extended fights with Palpatine and the Jedi, going over Han Solo on Kashyyyk helping Yoda find a communication device to locate where Grievous was, but to do so would make a rabbit hole that would seem endless. Obi-Wan and Grievous's original chase on Utapau would have taken around 9 minutes compared to the 2 minutes and 55 seconds we got in the film, and that is just one small scene. In the end, I decided to walk back the deleted coverage and only cover the scenes that were actually filmed by George Lucas. That does not mean I will not cover some deleted concepts or stunt footage of fights that was filmed. I just won't have time to dive into them in detail like I normally would. The goal here is to cover what we got from the film, and it's official deleted footage, not all the test and concept footage. There's a lot of great stuff that was omitted from this film, and I really suggest you go hunt for it if you're really interested in this stuff. With that said, we come to our first official deleted scene. The first batch of deleted scenes consist of Obi-Wan and Anakin running into General Grievous. Capturing them was the trap Obi-Wan spoke of in the previous scene, and it's during this scene where Shaak Ti is killed by Grievous. We will talk more about Shaak Ti in a later video. It is then that Anakin and Obi-Wan talk plans oddly, while the droids and Grievous stand there waiting for them to cut through the floor into a fuel leak below them. The next deleted scene has them escaping through a tunnel with electrical nodes that is filling up with combustible fuel. Obi-Wan notes this by saying,
"The slightest charge will blast us into oblivion."
The line is a nice nod to Episode 1, and the duo is quickly chased by super battle droids. There was even an unbelievable concept of a battle droid grabbing Obi-Wan and trying to drown him in the fuel, and thankfully this idea was not completed because he would be dead if that happened. After escaping the droids, Anakin seals a hatch and tells Obi-Wan that the seal should hold if there's an explosion. Then the best line from these scenes occurs, where Obi-Wan responds,
Anakin, you still have much to learn. That'll never hold. All right, I still have much to learn. Let's go.
The death of Shaak Ti would have been a better introduction for General Grievous, but the rest of the scenes really didn't work in my opinion. Clearly, discussing plans and having their enemies stand there waiting for them to come to a decision before taking them into custody is just unbelievable. Then they cut through the floor, fall down into flammable fuel, and then turn off their lightsabers just in time to avoid an explosion is very convenient. Then the scene is more convenient when you realize that the floor, which they cut through completely in a circle, just happened not to fall into the ultra-flammable fuel. You can see it conveniently hanging somehow, and it breaks suspension of disbelief when you realize there is no way it would be hanging. It would have dropped right into the fuel and would have killed them all. It was good the fuel corridor was cut, but the disappointment is that the following scene with our two heroes bantering was cut. These scenes with Obi-Wan and Anakin conversing would have really gone a long way to establish the evolution of their relationship, and it's really good stuff, which leads us to the next scene. After walking away from the blown hatch, Anakin and Obi-Wan have trouble translating R2's communication, and they debate where the Chancellor is. Obi-Wan says this,
I sense Count Dooku is above us. Oh, yes, you're right. Beep is up, I think.
Inserting R2-D2 lines in their conversation is a little too comedic, and I'm kind of glad this was cut. I still like their banter, though. Worse was that these scenes turned even more comedic when they run into the battle droids on the elevator and then say this.
Roger.
The comedic-like scene kept in the film was R2-D2 dealing with two super battle droids by setting them on fire. For metal to burn this oil and flame would have to be super hot, so it's kind of hard to believe, but the scene looks good and did erupt a chuckle the first time I watched it. Now back to the deleted scenes. They run into more battle droids when they open the elevator door, and more hijinks ensue. I'm glad they cut this scene because it's a little too comedic for the film. It just doesn't feel right. It does mess with the tone seriously and almost turns to slapstick. It's good they didn't jump the shark. since they wisely omitted these deleted scenes, we now get back to the serious tone of the movie when they come to Dooku. There is a lot of debate if Dooku knew Palpatine was Sidious, and what the heck was the plan here? Well, you're not going to find this information in the movie, and it is a plot hole. To start finding answers, we must first go to George Lucas.
The idea is that Palpatine is testing Anakin to see if he's strong enough to become his apprentice. And he doesn't tell Dooku what he's actually up to. Dooku thinks he's just going to fight him, but the whole thing is a setup by the Emperor to test Anakin's strength.
For more insight, I turned to the film novel, and it revealed that this is the plan in a nutshell. The whole point of Dooku being here, from Dooku's point of view, was for Dooku to be captured and put in a position where he could return as a martyr in the Republic. That is why Grievous' ship did not light speed out of the battle, as Palps was bait for Obi-Wan and Anakin. How these two specific Jedi would be charged with such a rescue is not clear, although Anakin's ties to the Chancellor could be a reason. I often wonder what would have happened if 20 or so Jedi were sent on this mission. Anyways, Obi-Wan was supposed to be killed by Dooku, who was once the best dueling Jedi in the Order, and he thought these two would be no problem, since he did it before with ease in Attack of the Clones. After killing Obi-Wan, Dooku was supposed to manipulate Anakin to test him per Palpatine's desires, and then Dooku would surrender or be captured by Anakin. Unfortunately, Anakin's raw power was so much that Dooku was killed. However, when Dooku was captured in the theoretical plan, Anakin would have been hailed a hero, while Dooku vilified the Jedi in the courts and preached the inadequacies of the Senate, thus advancing the creation of an empire that would eventually exclude aliens, because the majority of separatists were just that. Meanwhile, Palpatine would further manipulate Anakin, now that his only semi-positive link to the Jedi was gone, being Obi-Wan. Order 66 would come in somewhere, and the Jedi would be pronounced traitors, and Dooku hoped to rebuild an order befitting his vision as a martyr, while Palps ran the galaxy. The idea of the plan seems sound, however, I always had trouble understanding why Dooku would have willingly put himself in harm's way with Anakin, because Palpatine wanted Anakin as an apprentice. Dooku is a Sith and would surely know the rule of two, and would most likely see Anakin as a threat to his relationship with Palpatine. The moment Palps would have mentioned that he wanted Dooku to test Anakin so Palps could groom him, Dooku should have had alarm bells ringing. This is the only complication I see in the plan. However, critics like Plinkett try their best to make it sound like it is the most complicated thing to understand, just like he did with Episode 1 when discussing Qui-Gonn's plan on Tatooine.
Did Sidious tell him to capture Palpatine so that he could lure the Jedis on board only to kill Dooku?
But the loss of Count Dooku.
Wait, I guess not. Wouldn't Sidious have wanted the Jedis to escape? I'm so confused. But wait, there's more. In the first 5 minutes, we've already gotten into territory where every single line in action makes no sense again.
Trying to make things out to be overly complicated can sway people's opinion, and I'm sure that's what Plinkett is trying to do here. However, this film is not overly complicated. You could maybe make this argument for something like Dune or 2001, but not Revenge of the Sith. Another thing Plinkett tries to do is this.
First of all, once they rescue Palpatine, he says,
"Get help, you're no match for him. He's a Sith Lord."
His real response should have been, wait, get help from where? From who? Who on this ship could help us? And how do you know he's a Sith Lord? Or how do you even know what a Sith Lord is? Instead, the whole comment goes right over Obi-Wan's heads. I guess Palpatine was controlling his mind, right?
This is just another ludicrous attempt to jumble more details of the film, Does Palpatine really mean find help on this specific ship, or is he just pretending to convey the idea that he is concerned for their safety? There is nothing odd about this line at all. Then Plinkett asks how Palpatine would know that Dooku was a Sith. Well, Palpatine has been fighting the Separatists led by Dooku for 3 years now. Are you trying to suggest not once he asked the Jedi, for image's sake, who is this Jedi who broke from you and fought Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda on Geonosis and now leads an army against us? Would anyone think the Jedi would not be accountable politically for this very dangerous Force user that they helped create who is running amok? The Jedi knows Dooku is a Sith because Yoda says at the end of Attack of the Clones,
"Join the dark side, Dooku has. Lies, deceit, creating mistrust are his ways now."
Now let's assume that Yoda and the Jedi kept Palpatine and the Senate in the dark about their belief that Dooku was a Sith, because at the end of the Attack of the Clones, they planned to watch the Senate carefully, so them denying this information for political reasons is very in line with what the Jedi have been like for the entire prequels. If this is the case, Palpatine could easily explain to Anakin or Obi-Wan if they question him about knowing Dooku's Sith status. He could say he revealed it while he was in captivity. Or he could say he heard Dooku used a red lightsaber. And although some Jedi use red lightsabers, a person that has defected from the Jedi and uses a red lightsaber, it's safe to say they might be a Sith. We don't even live in a galaxy far, far and away, and most audience members know this fact. Why wouldn't Palpatine or all citizens of the society know this too? But Plinkett even goes more extreme by claiming that Palpatine is mind-controlling Obi-Wan and Anakin and Yoda and all the Jedi and all the Senate and anyone else he can think of throughout his video to make it sound convoluted. He says it in a joking manner. But Plinkett makes it sound like these things are implausible. The lightsaber fight had a lot removed from it as there was a ton of test footage that was never used. Anakin fighting Dooku alone was extensive and awesome. I was stunned some of the moves weren't used in the film. One being Anakin searing Dooku's eye during the fight, and Anakin actually dropping his lightsaber and catching it before Dooku cuts his arm off. There is more that you can find, and I would suggest looking it up. The only hard part for this fight for me was this scene. After this scene, Obi-Wan's legs are crushed. He was unconscious. No magic force field exists around Jedis. Just accept common sense here. This was so unnecessary, and he should have just been made unconscious after being thrown, and leave it at that. Instead, they did this, and Kenobi's part in the rest of the film should have been this.
Yay! Hooray, I have your sandwich! Yay! My what? My what? Oh, yay! Thank you, Biggs. Yay! I'm part of things too! Yay!
I'm a real proponent of verisimilitude, and this scene really hurts it. Moving forward, we come to the scene that is memed to death.
Do it.
And so, he does it. This scene works great, and had Dooku said something about Palpatine being a Sith, he might have survived. However, he doesn't. And it was Christopher Lee himself who didn't want to plea for his life on the set or say anything because the actor believed Dooku would not stoop to that level of indignity. Now, there was a scene during the fight in the original script where Palpatine said Dooku was bragging about having Tuskens kill Anakin's mom to anger Anakin and push him over the edge. I discussed this in my Part 2 video of Attack of the Clones. Needless to say, I'm very relieved this didn't go in the film. With that said, let's move on.
Move along.
Then after Dooku is dead, there's a sudden urgency to get off the ship when before there was no urgency at all.
Leave him or we'll never make it.
Why is there a sudden urgency to leave?
The trio is on an enemy ship in a battle. The ship can be damaged like it is shortly, and it can also jump to light speed at any second. The first urgency for Anakin and Obi-Wan was to find the Chancellor. They have done this. The second would be to get off the ship. Palpatine is also playing a citizen in a battlefield. Should he act as cool as the Jedi? Is there something wrong with your common sense? These arguments are just horrible. Now we have another set of deleted scenes where Palpatine, Anakin, and Obi-Wan return to the hangar to find a way out of the ship. The ship begins to roll and everything shifts. Some of the droids end up falling to their doom before they magnetize, and a few droids notice our heroes trying to leave the room from some pipes. They begin firing, and Palpatine is just about to fall when R2-D2 flies underneath him and saves the Chancellor's life. The group then gets into a door and finds that Grievous and some droids are waiting for them, and another fight ensues. This scene would be replaced by the ray shields, and I think the ray shields are far better choice as it moves along the action scenes faster and diminishes the tedium the hangar scene would have made. Sure, the visuals of R2 hanging by a tool and saving Palpatine would have been cool, but at this point we've spent some time with the opening scenes and we really need to get to the rest of the movie. Thus, forcing it along with the ray shields works fine. As a fan, I could go for a director's cut for all the prequels, especially this film, and since Disney is hurting for cash now it's the time to bring back Lucas and do it. Should I do the meme?
Do it.
Continuing on, let's get to Grievous, and this is what Plinkett thinks.
I don't even know who General Grievous is because no one told me yet. I'm gonna assume he's important because he's a general.
Here you go, bud. I know it's hard to pay attention to a movie, so let me pause it for you. This might help you understand.
Grievous sends his henchmen to attack them, and then for no reason he walks out of the frame and does nothing off camera while the Jedi defeat the henchmen. Where is he going? Why is he going over there? What the hell is he doing? Unless his plan was to escape.
What the hell is wrong with you? Of course he plans to escape. The Magna Guards are obviously his diversion, and we don't know what orders Grievous has, whether he keeps Obi-Wan and Anakin alive or dead, or what to do with the Chancellor. We have none of this information, so we go along with what the story shows us, not what you can imagine in your mind to overcomplicate everything. I hate to say this, but you really need to watch Plinkett's video in full. It is sad how desperate he tries to make this movie over complex. The only thing we do know about Grievous is that he answers to Sidious. We also know he's described as a coward.
General Grievous will run and hide as he always does. He's a coward.
And if you want to get technical, we can explain why Grievous coughs and has breathing trouble because of this scene here in the Clone Wars. Not to mention that George Lucas himself said Grievous was the prototype for Darth Vader. He wanted to show a villain in a suit that wasn't working to foreshadow Darth Vader. When he escaped, he made sure all the escape pods were jettisoned so they could not get off the ship. So, yes, he probably meant for them to die, not knowing that Palpatine was Sidious. That's it. That's all we know, and it's good enough to follow the basic concepts of this character. When the ship breaks apart, Anakin is forced to pilot the craft home, and Plinkett tries his best to say that this is the film backtracking to explain why Anakin is a good pilot, thus suggesting that this is a rushed attempt to establish his abilities to line up with the description he was given in Episode 4. This argument is about as useless as the next one.
So then, ignoring the logic that a runway wouldn't exist in a world where every craft can take off vertically, but on a planet that's nothing but a city, it's a good thing they didn't crash into a space orphanage.
Is every planet and craft in the galaxy the same? Are you sure there are not some vehicles that use runways? His assumption is probably right, but what if there is an emergency where a vertical landing is impossible? Shouldn't there be something created as a contingency for this emergency, to be used to avoid building damage? Oh look, a runway. They did do this. That sure makes sense. As we come to the end of part 1, I am stunned how bad Plinkett's review is so far. Sure, his stuff is entertaining, but it doesn't hold up well at all when looking at the film or its predecessors seriously. I also feel a bit conflicted, as there is so much that can be added from earlier script drafts, the film novel, and concepts to add to the film, like when Lieutenant Commander Lorth Nida demanded Grievous to surrender before broadsiding Grievous's ship. We see this broadside in the film. When the ship is falling apart into the planet, it is Nida that contacts planetary defenses to not blow up the ship in the atmosphere. After Obi-Wan informs them they have the Chancellor and the ship in their control, Nida would later be choked by Darth Vader in Empire Strikes Back. There was also extended dialogue between Anakin and Palpatine when Palps is trying to boss around Anakin, and he basically says that he answers to the Jedi, not the Chancellor, even though he believes Palps should be commanding the Jedi. Sadly, there's just so much material, and I had to omit some of it. Perhaps we can explore more in the next parts, but that is for another video. With that said, it's time to go.
Nein, Achtung! Bitte, no, you mustn't go. I need you. I never met nobody like you. I can't live without you. Du hast gemacht mein entire Leben.
Auf Wiedersehen. If you like what you see here, click like and subscribe. We'll see you in less than a month with a new video.